Hey friends, welcome back to the BoxCast podcast. Today we have Jake Gosselin with ChurchFront, and I'm telling you what, this is going to be exciting. Stay tuned. Do you think churches focus too much on budget versus, implementation or benefit or value to what it's going to bring?
I think one of the challenges, especially as a worship and production leader, is to be able to have these conversations with your direct report and helping them understand kind of like what are the options out there. Like if we invest $5,000 into this thing, like what's that tangible result going to be versus if we invest $50,000 into this thing, and helping them weigh those benefits against how does this help us achieve our mission as a church. We would say, hey, we need a building to do all this in, and nobody really puts up a fuss when we're like, yeah, it costs about $3 million to build this building, like, right? It's just like, It's just the reality of it. So it's like, okay, audio system, a lot of churches are like, hey, let's build this $3 million building. But man, oh, look at Sweetwater, I can get a PA system for $10,000. Like, let's just do that. Like why would we have to spend $100,000 on a PA system? And then, why do we need another $30,000 to $50,000 on acoustic treatment? Well, it's like, well, for this scale of what we're doing, if you're gonna have those standards of, man, we want audio to sound great at scale, we have to invest properly.
All right, Jake, welcome to the BoxCast podcast. How you been, man?
I've been doing well. Thanks for having me on, Gary. It's great to be here.
Absolutely. So I know that you live in Maryland and Florida and Texas and Colorado and Canada. Which state or country are you in right now?
Just two states. Colorado, that's currently where I'm at right now, I guess indicated by my hat that I'm wearing, and Florida. So those are kind of my two homes at this point. Mostly Florida's our primary residence. Will be there longer. We love the sunshine. We love the ocean. Just a great place to be. But summertime, what's great is it gets a little hot, but other people like to visit Florida for vacation in the summer. So we allow them to rent out our place to do that, and we can be in Colorado during the summer months with family that we have here. So it's a cool times we live in, and it's due to ChurchFront obviously being all remote. Everything that I do is pretty flexible to be done from wherever. So I feel pretty blessed to be able to do that.
Absolutely. So you're like a reverse snowbird, right? So you've taken the reverse snowbird effect here then at this point, right?
Well, I'd say it's pretty normal snowbird, right? Because we're avoiding the snow. That's the main reason we went to Florida, is like we're there through the winter months for sure. And when Colorado though, in the summertime, it's pretty hard to beat. So that's why we love being here.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, congratulations on your move. I know ChurchFront is just killing it. You guys are just racking up all kinds of subscribers and views, like 237,000 subscribers. Jake, it's like every other day I see a video come out on your channel on YouTube. You have over 554 videos, over 22 million views, and 13,000 followers in your Facebook groups. Wow. Holy mackerel.
I didn't even know that. I haven't even looked at those numbers, what the actual cumulative views were over that whole time. But that's crazy, 22 million. It's a overnight success, 7 years in the making. That's what they say, right? It's like, it took 7 years. In hindsight, it feels like it just went by really quick, making 500 and however many videos it is. But man, it's just week after week after week. We keep doing the same thing. I can't believe we haven't run out of video ideas yet, but it never stops.
I was just thinking that the other day when I was watching one of the latest videos you guys put up, the church tech, the tech reviews, the church tech walkthroughs and the tech tours, and how I'm like, are they ever going to come up with, other things? This is really good stuff. It just works. And I'm so surprised that you guys just keep pumping those out, man.
But I compare that type of media to real estate walkthroughs, right? So there's plenty of television shows out there, Architectural Digest, their YouTube channel. Here's another mansion of some celebrity or actor that we all know. They'll pump those out every week, and just all these real estate tours on YouTube. I like to watch those because it's kind of fun to watch. And I realized the other day that church tech tours are similar, where you have pretty much the same setup like a house would. We have audio, visuals, broadcast, In a house, you have like the kitchen, the living room, the master
Yeah.
bath, you know, and that's what I feel like. I'm kind of like almost a real estate tour guide that hopefully it educates people, inspires them on what churches are doing out there. It's interesting because you can start seeing trends of like what tools really helping people in different contexts. BoxCast being an example of one of those things. And it's fun to just take people on that tour. So from a content standpoint, it actually, it's a good reminder for folks listening. If you're coming up with content ideas, just do what works. Like, and then of course, if you can come up with good, innovative ideas, try it, see if it works. And then if not, for us, we know worship tech tours have worked really well. The audience expects them. They're always asking for more of them. So we keep doing them.
Yeah, dude, I asked for more of them because I like when Adam does them too, because like I've seen all the cool ones Adam's done through, and he's just like pointing out the things and all the complexity. I love that, Adam.
Well, what's fun with Adam, he's doing the tech tours of churches we've worked with, like usually the ones he's gone on site and helped with our clients through worship ministry school, and that's kind of cool because often those are a bit more relatable. Because I'll do the big mega church tech tours, and I didn't do a tour yesterday, but I was visiting a church near me where one camera setup was a C300 Mark III with 25 to 250 millimeter lens that had all the servos and stuff, and amazing tripod, monitors, all the things. This probably a tear deck on it too. It was like $60,000 for just this one camera out of 6 of them that they have. And a lot of people get kind of all they're stirred up about some of the price tags of these things, and I don't blame them, but at the same time, it's a scale thing, right? It's just the church is reaching tens of thousands of people on a weekly basis, and I just drool over that tech, right? It's just amazing. And what's cool is you can still learn from those setups. That's why I still like to show people like, hey, this is what the pros are using. This is a really great setup, and then you can actually still learn the same concepts that you can apply to scaled down, more budget friendly setup. So I'm looking at those setups. Adam is like looking at, hey, here's like small to mid-sized churches. We're working with them. We're helping them get the best bang for their buck on, maybe a camera setup that's a couple $1,000s, but has almost as good video quality.
Absolutely. Well, and that's the cool thing. You guys span the whole, I think in my view and everything that I see, you guys span the whole gambit of between what a small, medium-sized church would do and then what everybody else is doing and who are larger churches and what they're doing. And we'll get into some of that here in a little bit because I have some questions surrounding larger churches and your opinions about some things. But so just so people who are listening and watching who have never heard of ChurchFront, don't know who Jake Gosselin, the GOAT, is in the church media production world, what exactly is ChurchFront? What is worship ministry school? What do you do? And how does it help people and with their media and production?
So I'm definitely not the GOAT in the worship production world. ChurchFront, I'll start with myself because that kind of explains what ChurchFront is. I grew up in worship ministry in high school. That's when I felt called to worship ministry. I had been in church all my life. I was at a small Pentecostal church in Vermont, no good tech, analog console. Actually, I still think they have that same church. I go there when I go home and visit my family, has the same console there as they did. Gosh, was that 15 years ago when I installed it? It was a Mackie Onyx 32 channel analog console. And it's funny now I'm getting content ideas to be like, I want to go back to the worship space of my childhood and give it a complete makeover.
That's it, guys. If we do anything in this podcast, it's a content generator.
That's how I come up with ideas. And that was my first exposure to worship ministry. I started a youth worship band. I wanted to be the next Chris Tomlin, or Joel Houston. This is back in the early 2000s. And, went to college for music. I'm going to be a worship pastor. That's really who I would say I am first, is like, hey, I'm a worship leader. And I went the worship leader route in career. This was like early 2000 teens, 2015, I had my first full-time worship responsibility at a church here in Littleton. And it was great. I loved it. But I knew, and I think a lot of us have intuitively sensed this, especially worship leaders of our generation, that production is becoming so important to understand how to do well. And churches are faced with greater challenges, especially when we're dealing with older, buildings that were never integrated properly with audio, visual, lighting, streaming, all the things, because these buildings were often set up for choirs, organs, more traditional spaces.
Right.
Or even if it was a newer building, it's just like whoever was at that design conversation did not properly estimate the importance of proper production setup to just get the job done for good audio and visual and lighting to remove distractions and stuff. So that was my journey of like, man, I've gone through all the training and I get my music degree, got my MDiv degree. I want to be a worship pastor. And just quickly, I realized like, man, I can practice all day long, memorize my songs, lead a great band. But if audio is not mixed properly, the majority of our work is just meaningless. Like, because it's literally translating 5% of what we're trying to communicate here and how we're trying to engage and lead the congregation. I still think the Holy Spirit can work beyond like how good production is, but man, it's, to me, I relate it to something as simple as like trying to preach the gospel to people who speak English, but you're trying to preach in Chinese or something. It's like, you're just not getting the message across because you're getting you're missing some fundamental concepts here. So I learned, this was back 2015, 2016. I'm like, man, there are some great tools out there, like digital mixing consoles. Those were kind of a newer thing 10 years ago. And like, wow, this can really make our life easier when it comes to building a better mix and supporting the ministry with audio. And then, oh man, there's tools like Ableton Live to run a click and tracks and keep our band, tight and like just support us. So I was discovering all these tools for the first time, but then also realizing there's like no good direction on like how to get this stuff set up for the first time. So that's what really birthed the need and idea for ChurchFront, because at the same time, we have the information age we live in, right? Where anybody can look up how to learn things, on YouTube or the internet, on blogs. And it's, that to me has been kind of the opportunity of our generation of like, man, if you can package great information, content, put it online, cool things are going to happen. Right. And so that's where I started, that light bulb moment came off and for me, and especially when I discovered that, man, I really want to build kind of my own thing that supports church ministries rather than be a full-time staff person at a church. Like that was kind of my own unique journey of like, I think God has wired me for this role of like building and starting something like what became ChurchFront. So what happened is I started making YouTube videos 7 years ago, 2017, or 6 years ago. In 2017 of January, that's when you look at our YouTube channel, and that was like consistently, like every single week since then, ChurchFront has made a video, and that's how we've gotten to like 500 or 600 videos or something like that, right?
Yeah,
because about 52 videos a year. Sometimes we do more, times 6. It's gonna get you to 500 to 600 videos, and making videos about how to automate lyrics with Ableton Live, how to live stream, how to run tracks, how to mix, what's the best mixing console, all the things that a lot of people have been searching. And it's just like, you make it, people search for it, they traffic it, and it helps them. And then we're able to, of course, be like, hey, do you actually want to work with myself or my team to help coach you through things or whatever? That's what created our service-based business of consulting, where we can actually help churches remotely. We can really cut down on costs of really just sharing expertise with churches instead of having to hire someone locally or fly in someone like an integrator out there to come set something up. It's like, hey, we can actually partner with you remotely and really keep the costs down of bringing in expertise to you, someone like an Adam. And we can also, if you want, we can fly him there too, to do on-site work as well. So that's kind of the nature of what we are. We are a media company. We are a consulting company. So it's been a blast, and that's where we are now. So right now we have myself and 4 other full-time team members. So there's five of us full-time.
Wow.
And it's a blast.
Wow.
Being able to help churches every day.
Wow. You guys are killing it though. I mean, all your content seems to be really on point. There's a lot of things in there that I think a lot of church people who are, whether the director or the leader, or maybe even they're just the senior pastor looking for direction, they probably never even heard of the concepts, using Waves Performer in conjunction with your X32. Like they don't know how to do that. And so, I mean, I found the niche of your content to be just really focused. I think the first time I experienced your content was when you talked about Light Key. Now, Light Key, for anybody who's watching and listening, is a phenomenal universal lighting software. They use so many different adapters and so many different DMX controllers that go into it. And I loved it. And that the only reason I moved to Light Key from some dinky little Rhino DMX switching box was because of your recommendation to use Light Key and how to use it. And I fell in love. And I think that's the kind of content stuff that people in our space, me being a pastor, you being a worship pastor, needing to have that content information, knowing what's going on, and at least getting some content education on how to use it. That was the important piece. And so I feel like that you guys are just absolutely killing it with that. So
that's a great example of like me being like, hey, I'm a worship pastor. I'm not a professional LD or lighting designer. If you don't know that simple lingo of like an LD, it's like, oh, what's an LD? Like I've been there before.
Yeah.
Right. And like, you're not going to know all the lingo of DMX and protocol and, JANs and Grand MA and stuff like that. Those
ArcNet.
those were designed for people who are professionals at that. But in a church world, you are supposed to be professional at leading a band, leading your congregation of worship, and you only have so much time and effort to do that. Fortunately, there's technology like Light Key now that's like, hey, you have simple lighting cues in a church. You don't need crazy, insane control over your DMX system. So let's not use Grand MA to run a few, spotlights and maybe 2 moving lights. Like that's just complete overkill. But that's a good example of why ChurchFront has worked. It's like, let's just simplify this stuff.
Absolutely. And I find it enjoyable. Let me ask you, what is the oldest piece of equipment that you have right now that you just can't seem to get rid of? Doesn't matter what it is. Maybe something that's older than, 10 years old, something that you just absolutely love and can't get rid of.
Oh man. So I'm looking at my desk right now. A few things that are pretty old for me. Probably the oldest things I have would be, let's see, do I even have them in here? I've got some all clear custom in-ear monitors that are probably almost five years old or so. They're the RSM quad drivers.
Yeah.
And they sound really great. They, actually it says it 2018. So how many years is that? 19, 20, 20. Yeah, 5 years old. So they're great. They're not going anywhere. I haven't lost them. I've got the other, some newer set. These are the Spires. So these ones have a few more drivers. They have a little bit more low end. And looking at it right now, I'm like, oh man, I feel like this little connector is coming apart as I'm looking at it. But great quality headphones. And then that's probably the oldest thing on my desk right now because it just works. I'm looking at my it's amazing. I have been reflecting on this. Like Apple's pinging me right now to be like, hey, you need to like update your iPhone. You're in the upgrade program, and for me, it's like the iPhone 13 to 14. I'm like, why? It's not even like worth the effort for me to go to the Apple store and put up with their nonsense of how to change a phone. And then I guess I could have it come here, but I just feel like it's still like more work than it's worth right now to go from an iPhone 13 to 14. Then I really like these lav mics. Again, this is all like sitting on my office because I just got back from Florida. But these are like our Tascam DRL17, DRL10 or something like that.
Yes.
These cool little Tascam microphones that make it like really easy to just throw a lav on someone and it just sounds amazing. Like the quality of
they're really good. Yes, audio. They are really good.
And it's only $150, I think, for one of those.
That's awesome.
So those would be my oldest things I can think of off the top of my head. Yeah.
Hey, that's cool, man. So going into something else, I know that you had a really good podcast episode with Cade Young. And we also had a podcast with him and discussed some cool things, but I know that I align with him on the DAW versus console side of sending your live stream mix out. And I know that you land on the DAW side a little bit more. So tell me,
depends. It depends.
Yeah, but you kind of lean more to that side though. Cause I mean, I can understand. I would too. I get it. And we're actually considering that for my church, but what is the least favorite DAW that you use or have used?
Most of the time I've spent my time in Ableton, Logic, and Pro Tools. So I would actually kind of rank those as I'm still The one that I know the best is Ableton, so that's my favorite. Then Logic would be the second best, and then Pro Tools would be the third. I really haven't spent much time at all on like Reaper or some of those other options out there. And I would say that the DAW versus a separate mix bus or matrix mix, if Jake Gosselin had the duty of running and broadcast mix every single Sunday at a church, like I got, like I was professionally doing that, hands down, I would be using a DAW to do it. Even if we had an amazingly treated room, because as a more, when you're on the more pro end of mixing, still the ability to bring in those plugins and do some of the cool things you can do as you set up a DAW as a virtual mixing console. I still think it beats even some of the really high-end consoles. So I would still go with that. Just yesterday, I was at Brave Church. That's the church with the insane camera setup. They had, they were mixing in Pro Tools and had a great room set up for it, but they also have, very qualified people who are doing that.
Oh yeah.
But then for probably the vast majority of churches at this point, if you have a room that basically the way you can mix in the room is going to be translating well online, and maybe you just need to add in some crowd mics, for sure a matrix mix is a great option to go with. So that's what I told Cade too. So it's a both. To me, it's a both and. It's a both and.
It's a both and. Yeah, I agree with you on all of those statements. We're exploring the idea of using Waves Performer to jump into, making a little bit more of getting a little more auto tune into it, getting a little more of that sparkle that we want with some compression, so yeah, I agree with you. I'm right there with you. Now I need to know more about bacon pie.
Bacon pie.
I need to know more about it. What is bacon pie?
Oh, was that on my Instagram?
It was on your Instagram. Yeah.
That was, I got to ask Kaylee, my wife, about that. Cause now I think about it, we haven't had that for a long time. Cause that photo was from years and years ago. I think it was it's a similar, a quiche dish, right? Or so. Okay. That's what it looked like. I think that's all it was. I think it was a quiche with a bunch of bacon on top of it. If I remember correctly, I'd have to pull up that photo, but it was really good. To me, if we want to talk about diet, my biggest thing is just eat a lot of protein, and you'll be happy and feel great.
Yeah.
So that's my suggestion. I think there's a lot of, mostly I would eat carnivore. I think I don't know, right now I'm just when you have a wife and kids and she's trying to prep meals for the whole family, it's I'm going to sacrifice, carnivore preferences for whatever she wants to make her life easier. Right. But I do believe that. I think there's so much misinformation around diet out there and how beef is bad for you and stuff like that. To me, cows are the apex of food. So it's we really don't, you can literally just live off a cow and that's you don't need anything else.
Cow, the apex of food. I like that so much right now. Listen, we're going to create a clip out of that. That's going to go viral. Cows, the apex of food. PETA's going to be all over us, pal. We're going to be in trouble. Oh, man. Well, I had those questions. I just wanted to know what bacon pie was because I saw it on Instagram and I'm like, man, that does look really good. I wonder what it was like. It was chock full of bacon. And I showed my wife and she's like, you're never going to eat that and I'm never going to make it. And I'm like, that's fine. I'll do it myself someday.
Just come on over. Come on over and I'll ask Kaylee to make it again.
Perfect.
That is,
yes.
She's amazing cook. And again, it's again, when you have 3 to 4 kids, it makes the cooking process a little bit more hectic,
Absolutely.
But definitely she makes the best food ever.
Yeah, absolutely. I know that feeling. So all right, Jake, so let's get into some nitty gritty here. Okay. Because, and our pre-production stuff and our pre-prepping things, I told you there were going to be some questions that were a little bit more meta, had a little bit more feeling to them. If nobody knows who you are, then they can rewatch the beginning of this podcast episode to know who you are. But I have a serious burning question. I mean, I'm from BoxCast. You're at ChurchFront. 2 years ago, you did a review video of BoxCast on your own, unsolicited, and you impressed us quite a bit. And we reached out and talked to each other. And I really want to know, just real quick, why the reasons for, kind of making your switch. I wouldn't say switch, maybe changing a little bit of your preference to BoxCast versus Resi.
Yeah. So a couple of years ago, before pandemic time, I was completely unfamiliar with encoders because most churches, situations I've been at, we weren't even live streaming yet. You know, obviously pandemic comes, everybody starts live streaming, but I was more aware of, oh yeah, there's live streaming software out there like an Ecamm or OBS or things like that. And then eventually I kind of came across, as I was diving into the worship tech world, I was seeing what other churches were using. I came into the encoder space. I was like, well, what's an encoder? Why do you need it? And then I learned that a couple reasons why. One being having a device that's separate from your computer that is basically taking the load of compressing your audio and video feed for your live stream, compressing it in a way that it's going to make it small enough to deliver online so it can get to where it needs to go on the internet to social platforms, but also retain the quality. So just putting in the right video codec so that's going to look good getting to your viewers and just not facing glitches. Because I also saw like, man, there's a lot of software out there like an OBS, to me is so notorious. If you do not have all of the proper settings dialed into place, and if you don't sacrifice 3 lambs before your service, OBS will just like fail on you, you know, or the audio will come out of sync. And if I had a nickel for every time I saw someone in the ChurchFront Facebook group having OBS problems, I would probably be able to retire by now.
Right.
Absolutely. It's a software based thing. It's open source. It's free, and you get what you pay for with this. So I was learning like, oh man, yeah, there needs to be a more robust solution for a live stream because you don't want it to fail. So an encoder would address that. And then the other extremely convenient thing for the encoder thing is set up is having automated start and stop of your live stream and multi-streaming it to different platforms. So that's how I personally saw these different tools out there, like a BoxCast, like a Resi. And as I was doing tech tours, especially in larger church settings, I did see lots of Resi equipment. Because now if I were to explain to someone, hey, some of the pros and cons of BoxCast versus Resi, I would ultimately come down to like, hey, if you are a multi-campus, larger church, you need lots of encoding and decoding going on. It's just a very complex setup. And you're in that kind of 0.05% of churches that needs that, I think Resi does that solution really, really well. You should look into their products because they help bring the cost of that down for some of these mega churches who would spend, I don't know, they probably spend like thousands or multi-five figures per month on just getting their live stream reliably to different places. So Resi kind of disrupted that space in the multi-campus world. But if you're the 99.5% of churches out there that smaller to mid-size, even like some what might be a mega church, and maybe you don't have a lot of multi-campus needs and stuff like that, then that's where I'm like, you should really consider BoxCast, because from a user interface standpoint, the way the software works, it is very intuitive that I could teach my mother or my grandmother how to use it successfully, right? I can't say the same about Resi. I feel like Resi is designed for technical directors or video engineers. Even with their latest studio updates, they made improvements, but it's still, I still feel like it's designed for the IT people. BoxCast, I feel like, is designed for pastors, worship leaders, folks who they don't live in the world of it, right? So it's kind of the same, almost the same thing, not completely the same as like Light Key versus Grand MA for controlling things, right? I'm not going to tell a professional lighting designer to not use Grand MA in the same way that I'm not going to tell a church with very demanding encoding and decoding needs to not use Resi. Like that's dumb. There's a use case for both of them. Sure. So for our church, I'm mostly in small to mid-sized churches. The clients we're working are mostly small to mid-sized churches. And that's why I lean BoxCast, because I really like it. And from a hardware standpoint, I like how simple in price point of BoxCaster. And then the BoxCaster Pro, I love that device, like having the screen on it, having more input and output options for SDI, HDMI, XLR audio input. For us, we're able to just run our SDI line into it, be able to monitor it before it gets sent out. Just everything about the BoxCaster Pro, it's great. Is it overkill for a lot of smaller churches? Probably a little bit, but even for that price, I still think it's totally worth the quality, especially the HEVC codec that it uses. Like, it just looks amazing when it gets to your end audience. So that's my long kind of answer. I think I came across Redzi first. I'm like, oh, this is cool. I really like these features, but it's kind of like setting it up. This doesn't make a lot of sense for a lot of smaller churches.
Sure.
And then I came across BoxCast. I'm like, oh, this is why people use BoxCast, because I'd heard of it at that point and I understood it once I started using it.
Yeah. Well, we're very grateful for the fact that you took the time to investigate and do the research, and we're just glad to have you, advocate for us, and of course all of your users and clients and people who are in need of live streaming. And so we're honored to be a part of your partnership with that, man, and however we can help make those things better. So well, let's dive a little bit deeper, my friend. Let's take a tuna dive here, okay? So I know you visit a lot of churches, you talk to a lot of churches, you talk to a lot of pastors, media people, you discuss ins and outs of all the things that are related to anything in tech or worship ministry tech or anything that's relating to production, right? And I kind of feel the church has been the center of advancing this tech. Like the more that churches begin to pick it up, the more that tech begins to advance because they find flaws or needs or changes that absolutely need to occur. And then the rest of the world kind of adopts that and uses it to their liking and need. But I guess the question that I have for you is, where do you see the future of technology in the church heading? Where do you see that going right now?
I still think that it's going to be a both and. Because might be one side of the spectrum where you look at all of our live streaming gear that's come out and software and just the technology we have now to capture and reproduce an experience and put it online and let people experience that, right? Like yesterday, when we're recording this, that's when the new Apple Vision came out. I think there's going to be a lot of cool ideas that I literally can't think of. Other smart people, developers will think of cool ways to use that tool. Or maybe a complete kind of gimmick that flops. Like personally, I have not spent any time in the AR, VR world or anything like that, because I do think from a human standpoint, we might be coming up to this place where we're like, wait a second, staring at my phone for 7 hours every day is actually bad for me. Like it's not and I'm like, it's almost like it's a funny meme I think of. It's like, because recently, Apple's had like screen time features and stuff like that to be like, hey, like stop looking at your phone. So it's like Apple, hey, you should spend less time looking at your phone. You look at your screen time. And then also Apple, hey, put this thing on your face. It's just like, it's
use
like
it for 24 hours a day,
Yeah.
Stop looking at your phone, start looking through your phone, right? Like,
yeah. And again, I'm not going to discourage or, any innovation. Like I still think it's great. And to see what they're doing and coming out new devices, and with the live streaming world and the church space in particular, I think it's going to be, hey, like fortunately these tools are becoming more affordable, more cost effective, where churches can have an amazing in-person gathering. I don't think that's going to go away. I don't think, to me, like a completely virtual worship experience, hopefully the only time we actually have to use that is if there's like some issue with the government's making it illegal for us to actually get together and do it, whether it's a pandemic that happens again, or, some hopefully, not hopefully, but some really bad situation where like religion is like illegal. But that's a reality for some people in the world, right?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
So do I think that we're going to be being like, hey, family, time to go to church. Let's all put on our Apple Visions and then we'll log into our, our church's BoxCast account from our Vision operating system and participate that way? Lord, I hope not. Like that to me, I don't think that's the future of it. Not to say there aren't going to be some cool ways to implement that tech, but in the meantime, I just think it's going to continue to get more accessible for churches to just not have atrocious live streams for people to watch. Like if they're part of the community and they want to stay plugged into their church, they can do it online. It's never going to be as good as in person. Or if someone's considering visiting a church kind of as a marketing tool, they can see like, hey, what's this place like before I even walk through the front door? So I do think live streams are going to continue to function as the front door of churches. And then for churches who are motivated to actually do more online content, and I think it's just going to get easier to continue to like capture things on Sunday morning that you could repurpose for your social platforms. And again, not thinking of social media as, hey, let's just promote what's going on at the church, but let's actually use it to do ministry online.
Right.
I think that's
Yes.
going to become more and more common. And I think we've really only scratched the surface of it. And I think it might be a generational thing. Most pastors are still like older Gen Xers or baby boomers right now. And when you look at millennial pastors, don't really have any, maybe we have a lot of Gen Z youth pastors now, but like we understand a little bit more intuitively, like, hey, these phones and our live stream and the content we make isn't to be like, hey, come to women's Bible study, next week or whatever. But like, no, how can I actually answer people's questions and serve them spiritually and minister to them? So that's
Yeah.
where I think we're going to keep going. And I do think that we may have hit this like S curve of technological development until like
Hmm.
something crazy happens with maybe artificial intelligence or some other major category of tech. I
Right.
feel like things are the amount of change in increase of features on like new mixing consoles or cameras, it just seems to kind of be slowing down. Like that year of,
Yeah,
if
I
you
can
look
see
at
that.
year over year, the features being built into a new camera or mixing console, it's not as rapid as it was 10 years ago, in my opinion.
That's true. No, I agree. I agree with you. Yeah. No, I can see that. I see like AI being something that's built in. We talked about this with Cade too, is like AI and we're building in automation tools into like not just live streaming or, into Pro Presenter where you can set up a timeline and let it cue things with MIDI, and all that
Mhm.
jazz. But, you're seeing AI coming out and about, I mean, someone somewhere is going to develop it to where AI is actually implemented in the cloud and you're sending 16 channels of audio, from your Dante card into your computer, which is then sending that into the cloud, and it's doing all the mixing for you and applying
Yeah.
effects and limiters and gates and compressors and all that jazz. So like, I mean, there's all kinds of tech stuff. But in your opinion, though, as things are coming down the line in the future, whether we're slowing down or we're getting out of that S curve, what are some of the key things that you think leaders should be getting to focus on when it comes to church media, church production, live streaming, audio, all that jazz?
I always encourage so many churches right now, like focus on the basics and foundations of just the simple things like, hey, how consider audio, right? Before you worry about mixing in a DAW or getting the fanciest, newest mixing console, what's the acoustic treatment in your room like? What's the PA system that you're using? What microphones are you using? Because what people end up doing, they put the cart before the horse and they
Mm-hmm.
think getting that new fancy gadget or the new feature is going to solve the underlying issue of like, wow,
Oh
we have a
yeah.
horrible mix. But
Yep.
they put the cart before the horse and then it just still sounds horrible. They waste a lot of resources. So same thing with like live streaming. Before you consider the $60,000 Canon setup that I saw yesterday for capturing video, the only reason that church can do that in a way that's responsible is that they have a great lighting solutions already, right? Because
Oh yeah.
a $50,000 cinema camera is not going to make up for really poor lighting. So it's like, hey,
Absolutely not.
so after like audio, it's like, hey, how do we consider like our lighting system in here? So then even with our uh, little PTZ cameras we're using with tiny sensors, even those could start looking better because the subjects are lit properly. And oh yeah, like what about before we even consider going into a higher resolution camera or getting new lenses? What's our encoding solution like? Are we maintaining the quality of video, but when it gets sent online? Or are we
Yeah.
capturing this beautiful image and then we're compressing it in OBS and it's not reliably getting online and it just looks horrible when it gets online, right?
Oh
So
yeah.
it's like
Absolutely.
it's like knowing what the foundation is before you keep building on top of it.
Well, it's the foundations that make everything stable. I mean, if you don't have a stable base, then you're not going to have a stable footing for the advanced stuff. I mean, and even we talk about that even in scripture. I mean, it's that's a scriptural point of view. It's a scriptural basis. It's biblical that you have to start with the foot, the cornerstone of everything, and that's usually the basics. And I completely agree with you, man. So leading into that, and it's cool that you said that a little bit. Like, did you see? Is there like an obsessive need to always do like more? Better, or is it just something that we should not focus on but be coherent about?
I think we should always be doing more better, but shifting. I think throughout different seasons of your church's life and growth, you can turn the focus to different things to be like, okay, so let's talk about just worship and production ministry or worship leader of that area, and be like, okay, you have to list out like what are all the goals and like what's prioritized, like what's the most important to address, and maybe try to break it down over to timeline. So we do this a lot with our clients who work with us of like, let's make a plan and be like, hey, for this first like 2 months, let's just focus on cleaning up and rebuilding our audio system right now, and make that better. Okay, that's done. And now the next following 2 months, because we built good systems and we have a mixing template, we know what we're doing, we've learned how to mix better as the worship ministry leader. The next 2 months, let's dive into recruiting and training audio engineers, because now we have a system to recruit people into and plug them into that's going to work. So to me, it's you can actually always be getting better, but to me, it's not like, I think worship leaders sometimes could get stuck with like, oh man, the thing that means better and growing in our ministry right now is like, how can we get the congregation to feel more hyped during the worship service, or like pick songs that are crazier, or like, I don't know, or like, how can we, maybe with audio, people get too focused on, man, like if we only had Neve preamps for our stage boxes, like that's going to solve our, that's going to be it. Right. Like that's going to be it's like, no, it's not. Like focus on, focus on the areas of growth that are going to make that biggest, most leveraged impact. And a lot of that comes with building the right systems, like I was talking about with something as simple as your audio system, and then empowering that system with people who can run it, who can know it, they can learn it, they can run it well. And then you can shift your focus in the next season to be like, okay, let's tackle our lighting system and do the same thing. Build a great system, recruit people into it, and then let's move on to our streaming system. Let's move on to recruiting more musicians. Like that's how I view always getting better and growing. It's not obsessing over like a 1 to 2% increase in quality. To me, it's like, what's going to bring this up like 30 to 40% increase in quality, or even 10%.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you did a video with Grace Church out of Melbourne, Florida, right? You guys did a video there, and I loved that video. It was fantastic because you just took the same approach that you said here. You're taking that same approach there at that church as well. Like not just in like full aspect, but you're focusing on the budget that you have at the moment and what are the key things that are most important for increasing A, production quality, but B, limiting the distractions that are necessary to be removed. And I think that's absolutely phenomenal advice to anyone who's looking to implement something, or go that realm. So let me ask you, do you think churches, and really quickly, do you think churches focus too much on budget versus implementation or benefit or value to what it's going to bring to the service? Like, is budget always like the cash is king kind of thing, familiarity?
Yeah, I do think it's hard. I think one of the challenges, especially as a worship and production leader, is to be able to have these conversations with your direct report or a financial committee at your church, because they're the decision makers, and helping them understand kind of like what are the options out there. Like if we invest $5,000 into this thing, like what's that tangible result going to be versus if we invest $50,000 into this thing, and helping them weigh those benefits against how does this help us achieve our mission as a church? Because everything has to be reverse engineered from there. Right. So, and helping connect the dots for those leaders to tell them like, hey, our mission as a church is to have really engaging, transformative worship services, especially, let's say, just in-person worship services. So what does it say about how much we should be willing to invest into an audio system if part of that engaging worship service, for music to be for music to come across clearly, for preaching to come across clearly, what's it going to take to reach those standards? Because we would say, hey, we need a building to do all this in. And nobody really puts up a fuss when we're like, yeah, it's cost about $3 million to build this building. Like, it is what it is. Like we could try to do it on $3,000 and, just make it homemade, chop down some trees and try to build something. But Obviously the city's not going to approve that for code, and then it's probably going to fall down, right? It's just like,
Right.
it's just the reality of it. So it's like, okay, audio system, a lot of churches are like, hey, let's build this $3 million building. But man, oh, look, on Sweetwater, I can get a PA system for $10,000. Like, let's just do that. Like, why would we have to spend $100,000 on a PA system? And then, why would we need another $30,000 to $50,000 on acoustic treatment? Well, it's like, well, for this scale of what we're doing, if you're going to have those standards of, man, we want audio to sound great at scale, we have to invest properly into those things. Yeah. So if we want, it's in the same way that we want our building to be at code and to be safe at scale, that large, it's going to cost that price tag. We need to invest those dollars to make it happen. So I think it's really breaking things down to first principles with leadership and helping them understand that.
Yeah, absolutely, man. No, I completely agree. I mean, I look back at my church, like when we moved to our X32 into our digital snake system and in-ear monitors and decided to implement that, new subs and all that jazz. It was for me, it was more of a, hey, this is the problems that we need to solve and why moving to this would fix those and how they would fix it. Like we were having a problem. We had another church that was subleasing the building from us using our equipment at the same time. And it was a dangerous thing because every Sunday morning we come in and using an old Yamaha. Oh, I forget, it was like an MQL or something. I forget. It's so old, but all the settings were changed. So every morning we're spending like 40 minutes trying to re-put everything back to the way it should be, where, digital console at that point in time, and the same now, save that preset, save that scene, buddy. So you have that set in there, and that solved a lot of headaches for us. And it was just solving a problem and showing why that problem can be solved using specific things. And then of course, going back to the basics, knowing how to use your equipment is all of obvious, circumstance there. You've got to be able to know how to use it. But that leads me into a good question for you. Cause you ChurchFront, you guys go the whole gambit, right? You go from big church, even bigger church to small church, and hey, really small church. Like, you guys hit the whole gambit, which is awesome. So do you feel that there's kind of like this overarching, I don't want to say stigma, but maybe this presence for small, medium churches to feel or to replicate or to emulate the big churches that are out there? And not even just that, like, is it helping or hindering those churches who want to replicate something or try to become an emulation of, like, say, Elevation or Red Rocks or Church on the Move? Do you think it's helping or hindering those types of churches who aren't necessarily that kind of church?
Yeah, I think an example that comes to mind for me right now would be let's talk about like worship music side of things, where and some of this is kind of partly due to the tech that is available to us that we implement because it's there and it's easy to do. Mm-hmm. So we see, like, Elevation Rhythm comes out with amazing songs that are great. They've got probably like a 30-piece band or something like that. I don't know. I don't listen to them that much. It's awesome stuff. And then, oh, great. Well, Multitracks has playback, and I can have that same feel and vibe of that band, like at my little tiny church. And so I'm just going to do it. So to me, that's kind of like a negative thing where I'm like, okay, guys, like, what are other ways you could even do that same song, but just make it more appropriate to your band, your musicianship and skill set that you have in your church. And instead of just like piping through a full backing tracks of a virtual band alongside of it. Again, and maybe that's just my own personal musical preference, because not to say people can't worship to backing tracks. They do. I've seen it before. So that kind of can create some weird stuff when it comes to like the worship music side of things. And then, yeah, sometimes I worry about when people watch worship tech tours and they're like, oh, that big church is using that $60,000 camera setup. Must mean we have to get one too. It's like, that's like blatant, not understanding how to allocate funds properly, or not being educated enough about the other options out there that church could use, or people kind of non-critically, installing things like a huge LED wall where it's like, well, do you guys really need it? Like, is it really going to help you? So that's how, even though I've been like the ChurchFront guy, I love worship tech. At the same time, and I think you'll see this as we at Rock Harbor Church in Florida, as we kind of improve things there. That's an old traditional worship space. It was a Lutheran building. They just bought it a couple months ago, and we are really trying to tastefully upgrade tech there that supports what that building is already trying to communicate architecturally, rather than be like, let's just slap a big LED wall in the middle and black out everything and
Well, it
cover
has
the stained
beautiful stained
glass.
glass. Yeah, it's got that
Yeah.
stained glass. It's so
Yeah.
pretty, man.
Because
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that's something where we are completely missing out on in modern worship environments in the church, because, well, yeah, it's expensive to have nice architecture in your building. Maybe it's not culturally fashionable as much anymore. And then integrators aren't really going to make much money on stained glass. So why are they going to encourage
Right.
you to do that in their design, right? So
Right.
economically, it doesn't make sense. So and pragmatically, it makes a lot more sense to like be like, hey, we're gonna buy former shopping mall building, and we're gonna black it out, and we're just gonna fly our PA, put an LED wall in, and then boom, we got a worship environment, right? Where it's like, well, why don't we have a little bit more even theological intentionality to the space that we're building for worship? So those are the things going through my mind now, and I think there's still so much room to have amazing technology support this vision that I have for a church like Rock Harbor, because
Right.
we still can have great lighting, we still can have amazing sound, we can still have an amazing live stream, but we're not just doing the typical like church in a box thing,
Yeah.
which to me, I personally feel a little bit tired about it. I don't know
Well, it
how
is
others
getting kind of
feel.
old. It is getting kind of old. I mean, quite honestly, I'm going to be right there with
And
you,
I
man.
think and I think our communities are really local communities are missing something where, unfortunately, a lot of these larger, beautiful church buildings, especially here in a post-Christian city like Denver, they're turning into nightclubs or condos and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
that it's cool to have that feeling when you walk into a building with higher ceilings, stained glass, just seeing the stories that the stained glass tell, like it's cool stuff. So maybe I think the pendulum might swing back that way. We might see that happen in coming
Well,
years.
I don't disagree. I mean, there's quite a few churches like Harvest Church in Chicago who they bought that space right in the middle of Chicago, and that building is just
Yeah.
100 years plus, and it's so gorgeous. And they've chosen not to renovate any of the stained glass,
Mhm.
and they made I mean, it's an old traditional. I think it was a old Presbyterian building,
Mhm.
beautiful inside. I mean, and I agree with you in a lot of that, because there's a hearkening that has to go back to our roots,
Mhm.
not just in ministry, but as as churches go through. But that doesn't mean we can't tag along some of the advancements that are coming in production and technology, and the things that help make distractionless services easier to achieve and brings people into a space of worship. So
Yeah.
I'm right there with you, man.
Well,
Absolutely.
Wellspring Church, that's a tech tour that we have on our channel. People can check out. They're Anglican church. Probably my favorite worship space. Stained glass. They took an old building. They treated it properly. They got an L acoustic rig. They've got an LED wall. They got amazing
Mm,
lighting. But it really serves like that liturgical Anglican worship. Um, I'm a I'm a closet Anglican. I would probably go to that church, but I've got other life circumstances that don't make sense right now for that to happen. But yeah, it's cool what I'm seeing happen there. Or even another space I actually do think is cool. I haven't been there, but what I see is Saddleback's church in
yeah.
LA.
Yes.
I think for them it's like they really open up the windows because they're in beautiful California, so they can like literally have open air auditorium essentially, right? And it's just
Hmm.
like, what are more unique things churches can do like that with their worship space?
Absolutely. There's a larger church in Naperville, Illinois that when I was pastoring in Illinois, we would go visit, and the name of the church is eluding me, but it's in Naperville, Illinois, and they have this. It's a huge auditorium, but they have a cross centered right in the middle of their stage. They have two LED walls on the left and the right, but it's like a small baptismal area that's got this rock fascia on the front, but everything else is traditional.
Mm,
With the lighting is great, the video systems look awesome, the audio quality is outstanding, but they
mm,
decided to keep that rooted traditionalist view right there to harken back to their roots, and I think it's amazing. Yeah, absolutely. Well,
yeah.
Jake, I know we're running out of time here, man, so I'm actually just absolutely 100% ecstatic that you joined me today. I've got a couple of finishing things here that I want to go over with you real quick. So, worship ministry school, how do people get to it? ChurchFront, how do people get to it? Where do they see you? How can they get in contact with you?
Yeah, so ChurchFront is easy to find on YouTube. That's where we have the 500 plus free videos that anybody can watch on YouTube that you'll be equipped, and that kind of shows our whole journey, my own journey of learning these things too. And we have so many like experts on that channel. Like we've got a Luke Hendrickson, we've got Jesse O'Brien, we've got Chad Vegas. Like that's one thing that I do feel, if I'm going to feel proud of something, it's like, man, I'm just glad that I'm able to compile this really quality content, not from me, but from these experts, and put it out there for free. We take all of our ChurchFront Live keynotes, we put them out there for free, because they can be, nobody's stopping us. Our business model can work that way. We don't have to charge for it. So go enjoy all the free content. And then if you want the more systematic help from our team, go to worshipministryschool.com. So we can help you through courses. We can help you through remote consulting and also in-person consulting. So a lot of that too looks like you've already have all the right gear at your church. You got a good digital mixing console. You've got cameras. You've got BoxCast. You've got the right tools, but like you just don't have a cohesive plan of like piecing it all together. That's what we do. We really just help churches maximize what they already have really well and clean stuff up, and then train their team members, and then help them if they're going to make upgrades. Be like, hey, let's make the wisest upgrades possible moving for you to move forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Worship Ministry School is awesome. I highly recommend it if you're in need of getting some of that training and that additional content, especially the consultation parts are really cool. You mentioned ChurchFront Live. I'm so stoked about this. Tell me, what is it, where is it, and when is it, my friend?
Yeah, it's our 2-day conference that ChurchFront's been doing. We've only done it for a couple of years now, and it happens here at my church that I'm at right now, South Fellowship Church in Littleton, Colorado. And it's October 17th through 18th of this year. And Colorado is amazing that time of year. It's in fall and beautiful weather. You're going to see the trees changing colors. And if you're from anywhere, you're invited to come. We've had people from different continents come to this event before. It just kind of blows my mind. And we'll probably have around, I would estimate around 300 to 400 worship ministry leaders this year. That's about as many as we can hold in this space. And we'll have guest experts we're flying in to give great keynotes. We do a breakout workshop. Kind of design this conference to just be like, what of the conferences I've been to, like, what do I like about conferences, and how do we design one that I enjoy personally to be at? And that's kind of how I've designed it to be. And we had a blast last year. And again, we are going to live stream it thanks to BoxCast. We'll be using their BoxCaster Pro and their streaming platform to do that. We did it last year and it worked great. We had the stream going it was like literally like 12 hours straight each day. And it no glitches at all. And we were interacting with people through BoxCast TV, and it was just like, man, this was awesome. So the stream will be there, so you can buy stream tickets for you and your team if you can't come here. But if you can come here, it's fun because there's just so much in-person cool stuff that happens when you meet people in person. You develop these connections. You're going to be equipped. Every time people come, they're like, oh man, our team was so inspired by that. And they come up with clear takeaways of like, what's the next step for their ministry. So we'd love to see you there. Just go to churchfrontlive.com and you can register.
Fantastic. Yeah. And I'm going to see you guys there. BoxCast is going to be there. Yep. And we're so excited to finally meet everybody in person and be able to see that. And Rylan Russell is a speaker. Cade Young's there. So, yep. I mean, everybody we've had on the podcast episodes are going to be there. So we're really excited.
That's Jake, my other favorite thing is I'm literally get to invite my friends for keynote talks, right?
Exactly.
Because these guys, like, to me, it's kind of the changing of the times. Like, I'm like, okay, a lot of other worship ministry conferences out there tend to lean towards like, let's just have the big artists talk, or let's just have the big tech director from humongous church talk. And it's great. Those guys deliver value. I love making videos with them. At the same time, I'm like, man, there's some people that I want the ChurchFront community to know about, like a Ryland, like a Cade. Perhaps they've already come across their channel already, so it's just fun for them to get to know them in person. Yes. So I want that to happen. But also, people are it's still early in this whole like YouTube world. People just aren't aware of it. And Absolutely. People, they're not aware of these experts out there who just have really practical solutions that can actually apply to their situation. So
Yeah.
I love being kind of a networker in that way.
Yeah, and we're all grateful for that too, man. I really appreciate all of that because you've brought me into some things, and I've seen some people and got to talk with people a little bit, and I've used your model of just connecting and networking, and so that's what BoxCast right now is beginning to focus on. Like, we really want to be a resource hub of knowledge and expertise for other people as well. So BoxCast has some great stuff, but we know there are other people out there who can do it better and do it wiser and faster and with a lot more efficiency. So, Jake, thank you so much, man, for joining me today. It has been literally the highlight of my week. I am so grateful for your time and really appreciate it. We'll link everything down in our description down below. If you want to get a hold of Jake or check out ChurchFront Live and the conference and want to register. And of course, if you have any questions, comments, please go ahead and do so. Click that subscribe button, like us, and comment. And as always, this is the BoxCast podcast. Happy streaming.